Sean, how are you? I'm here to read chapter 8 of The Amazing Wisdom of My Shed by Simon Farnaby, illustrated by Claire Powell, and read with the kind permission of Hodder Publishers. So, in the last chapter, Merdyn made it back to Rose's house. He crashed the neighbour's car into a lamppost, the police came, and Rose's mum thinks that he's long lost Uncle Martin. And then Merdyn decided to eat fish and chips and then have a drink out of the toilet. So it was all a bit bizarre. So chapter 8, goodness knows what's going to happen. It's called Time for Bed. There's a wizard in my shed. Rose was putting Bubbles to bed in her room. She had the smallest room in the house, but she didn't mind. It was cosy. Posters of her favourite singers adorned the walls. Beyonce, of course, Amy Winehouse, Florence and the Machine. Even her mum in a poster from when Susie was in the Mondays. She was stunning and wild, all blonde hair and lipstick and tons of attitude. Any other free space was taken up with pictures of animals, dogs, cats, hamsters, horses, and of course guinea pigs. Rose carefully measured out Bubbles' vitamin C powder, a bowl full of pellets and some hay to chew on. She looked at the enchanted pine cone next to his cage. Had she imagined Bubbles' voice? What happened in the wood already felt like a dream. And what about the singing spell? Was Merdyn even really a wizard or a warlock or whatever he said he was? And why had he been in such a terrible mood since the calendar incident? She picked up the pine cone and pressed it against Bubbles' fuzzy head. Bubbles, she said softly, you still there? There was a long pause as Bubbles continued chewing. Rose was about to turn away in disappointment when he suddenly stopped munching, stared into the middle distance, then looked up at Rose, his nostrils flared. Did you say something? He squeaked. I couldn't hear. I was chewing on the stuff. Rose let out a huge sigh of relief. She hadn't imagined the whole thing. Why didn't you say something before? She asked, irritated suddenly. When? Asked Bubbles. He started chomping loudly on his hay again. When I was trying to prove to Mum that Merdyn could... What? Interrupted Bubbles. I can't hear you. I said I really could have done with your help earlier when I was talking to Mum. When were you talking to a nun? What? You said you were talking to a nun, Bubbles said, nibbling again. My mum! Stop chewing your hay, complained Rose, barely comprehending that she was losing patience with her own talking pet guinea pig. If all guinea pigs are as annoying as this, it's probably best they don't talk, thought Rose. But she forced herself to return to a calm voice. When I was talking with Mum, why didn't you speak? Bubbles shrugged. Dunno, couldn't think of anything to say. Then he paused, twitched his nose and added, Can I go back to eating my dinner now? Rose nodded and put the pine cone on the windowsill and looked out of the window. She saw Merdyn sitting alone in the middle of the garden. Her mum had tried to persuade him to sleep in the house, but he was having none of it. He said he couldn't bear to sleep under the same roof as a privy, so Susie had eventually given up and made him a bed in the shed with a little lamp next to it. It was strange how happy her mum seemed since Merdyn had arrived. Usually Susie sat on the couch as if nailed to it, even resenting having to get up to go to the toilet, but now she was plumping Merdyn's pillow and fetching him glasses of water and bedtime snacks, as if she were the most accommodating person in the world. Rose had missed this side of her mum. Susie'd even offered Merdyn a pair of Rose's dad's old pyjamas, but he said they weren't woolly or scratchy enough for him and that wearing them would be like wearing nothing at all. Rose thought Merdyn looked so sad sitting there all on his own in the moonlight, and Rose certainly knew how it felt to be alone. She put on her dressing gown over her pyjamas and went downstairs. Opening the back door, she felt the cold air around her ankles as she approached the cross-legged Warlock. She sat down on the damp grass next to him. You okay? She asked. No, I am not okay, he grumped, and your promise to help me go home just became a sight harder. Rose frowned. What do you mean? Because I am home, child. I am from this very place. 1,500 years ago. Last time I did looketh, it was the year 511. Rose's mind started exploding. Surely that was impossible, but it did explain a lot. The incident with the phone, the car, the annoying these and thous. How did you get here? She said after a long pause. There was a trial. I was sentenced to the rivers of purgatory, but my arch enemy Jeremiah Jerobo sent me to the rivers of time instead. A trial? What did you do? Rose inquired nervously, thinking how cross her mum would be when she realised she'd invited a criminal to live in the shed. Oh, worry not, child, 'twas nothing. Merdyn waved his hand disparagingly. Just treason, arson, witchcraft, sorcery, petty theft, grand theft, mere trifles. Rose's eyes widened. It did not sound like trifles. It sounded like a whole pudding tray followed by rhubarb crumble and custard. And this was the man she'd entrusted to make her dreams come true. Just then Rose noticed that Merdyn was holding something in his hand. It was a strangely perfect oblong stone about the size of a large matchbox with the face of a beautiful woman etched into one side. Is that your wife? She asked. The Warlock smiled fondly. A wife? Nay, Warlocks have no time for wives. Thou can't handcuff the wind. This struck Rose as a rather sexist opinion, but he was literally from the Dark Ages, so she let the comment slide. Instead, she raised her eyebrows inquisitively. What? Said Merdyn uncomfortably. You don't have to pull that rubbish with me. I speaketh no rubbish, child, how dare thee? I am Merdyn the Wild, the finest Warlock who ever liveth, blah, 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 yeah. I know a defence mechanism when I see one, said Rose. I practically invented them. A what? Said Merdyn. You pretend you don't care, so you never get hurt. Except it doesn't work, does it? Because you still feel hurt. And here, Rose pointed to her heart, she must have meant a lot to you for you to want to carve her face. It's very beautiful. Merdyn spoke slowly. Her name was Evanhart. She was a very powerful and good witch, a heart the size of Albion. And Albion is an old name for the island of Great Britain. Merdyn's not literally saying her heart was that big because that would be ridiculous, but she was obviously very nice. Back to the story. And a brain the size of a mountain ox. There was a time when I thought we would marry, have younglings, but our paths did divergeth. Why? Asked Rose. Zounds, thou asketh a lot of questions, Merdyn snapped, but his eyes softened into sadness again as he stared into the distance. If thou must know, a great and terrible war did cometh, and the king ordered every man to join the fight. Evanhart did beggeth me not to go. She said, wars change people. How right she was. He swallowed. Something did happeneth, something unspeakable, and it was then who I found out who I really was. Not a wizard, not a family man, but a warlock. Destined for greatness, yes, but not goodness. What happened? Asked Rose breathlessly. Merdyn frowned. What aspect of unspeakable do thou not comprehendeth? Rose was undeterred. She had plenty of other questions. What was it like then in the Dark Ages? It must have been very different from now. Ha! Merdyn snorted. 'Tis like comparing flower and fowl. The air here it stinketh. There is no nature. Where I am from, yes, there was turmoil and war, but we did believe everything was one. The trees, the birds, the grass beneath our feet, all was connected from one edge of this great flat earth to the other. Rose felt she ought to pick him up on the flat earth thing, but now maybe wasn't the time. It made her think, though. There had to be so much that Merdyn didn't know, that the earth was round for a start, the Big Bang, E equals MC squared. Suddenly Rose had a brilliant idea. Of course, why hadn't she thought of this before? Merdyn, we should go to the library tomorrow, she said. They've got loads of old history books there. Maybe you could find out what happened to Evanhart. Yes, child. Merdyn looked excited now. Thou could look me up. Then thou will see how famous I once was. Yeah, and maybe we'll even find out how to get you back home. I'll meet you at the church near my school at 3:30. Right. What be 3:30? Merdyn asked. Wow, hanging out with someone from the Dark Ages was going to be hard work. Sort of halfway between lunch and dinner time, said Rose. Ah, when the sun passes over the yardarm. If you prefer that, yeah. I'll be there, Merdyn frowned. But tell me why? Why not meet at thy school? Rose blushed. Oh, well, it's just, well, to modernise, you look like someone who's fallen on hard times. You mean a numble crust? Demanded Merdyn. I look to ye like a toothless beggar. Yeah, just a little bit, yeah, said Rose. Well, I would hide thee away if thou were in my time, Merdyn barked defensively. I mean, look at thee, thy bizarre clothing made from scratchless wool, thy fuzzy hair, the way thou speaketh. People would think I was friends with a rock elf. Rose didn't know what a rock elf was, but she recognised an insult when she heard one, and it suddenly reminded her too much of school. She tried to stop it, but her eyes filled with tears. You're not the only one who's had a bad day, you know, she said. You might have been in a medieval war, but I've had an audition from hell go viral on YouTube. I'll see you tomorrow. She jumped up and rushed back into the house, slamming the door on her way in. Bang! Merdyn the Wild, the greatest warlock who has ever lived, knew he'd been mean. When would he learn? Here he was, 1,500 years in the future, all alone in a strange land, and he'd just managed to insult the only person who'd shown him an inch of kindness. How Evanhart would have disapproved. He looked at her image in the stone once more and sighed. Merdyn did hide his love away. Oh, how the girl was right. He didst regret it sore today, with all his warlock might. So that's the end of chapter 8. And Merdyn and Rose are a bit sad, really. But they're going to go to the library to find out what they can about Merdyn's past and about what happened to Evanhart. I will see you next time for chapter 9, which is called Returning These Pages to the Dark Ages. Take care, everyone. See you soon. Bye-bye.